There are thousands of customers still without power this morning across parts of P.E.I. in Nova Scotia, and it's more than a week since Fiona swept through Atlantic Canada. For people in rural areas, the long outages are making life especially difficult, and many are doing whatever they can to keep the situation from getting any worse.
So just holding those two trees in place right now to keep the pressure off the line.
Whatever works, as I said, there's no firm timeline for when power will be restored to all of the customers who are still blacked out. Brett Ruskin is in Halifax this morning, keeping a watch on really the whole region. But why don't we talk about where you are there, Nova Scotia? And I mentioned, we're into week 2 of all of this, Brett, now. How are people continuing to cope?
Well, yeah, Heather, it's not easy for folks who have been waiting for power, now going on to day 9 since Fiona made landfall here on the East Coast. And I was digging into the numbers, digging into the outage numbers, because right now we're looking at around 24,000 or so homes and businesses without electricity here in Nova Scotia. But you take a look at that, that's the total number of people total of households and customers without power, but there's also the number of outages. So you take a look, there's about 5,000 or so total outages. So that means that for every one of the outages, the Nova Scotia Power resolves and gets people hooked back up. That's an average of around 4 households, 4.7 households. So there's lots of different outages in lots of different places. That is why the reconnection is so slow. That's why so many people, especially in rural areas and more isolated areas, are having to wait such a long time. Here's just one of those residents talking about how the wait has been so far.
Yeah, it's pretty tough. Physically, mentally exhausting. Normally love running my saw a lot, but my hands are throbbing at nighttime, having a hard time sleep, not eating properly. Mentally, it's very exhausting. You end up having a couple setbacks, and your mind can go to a dark spot sometimes.
So not an easy go for anyone who's still waiting for the power to go on, both what we heard there as well as thousands of other people across the Maritimes. Heather?
Well, focus in on Prince Edward Island, because such a high percentage of people on the island lost their power, and not all of it is restored to this point either, Brett.
That's right, and that's not stopping schools from opening. There's going to be lots of kids going back to school today. Most of the schools on Prince Edward Island are open. There's a handful that aren't yet, still don't have power, still aren't able to open. But there's still about 18,000, 17,000 or so homes and businesses without electricity, and that means that only about 78% of the overall outages have been resolved. That's a far fewer percentage than elsewhere from other provinces. So crews are certainly working day and night, or at least sunrise to sunset on the island, trying to get access to the downed lines and trying to get those lines back energized and restored so people can have their lights back on once again. Heather?
Brett, thank you very much. There's Brett from a beautiful day in Halifax this morning.